I've gotta say, the title of Gaiflame gave me a lot of trouble. The way it's rendered in Japanese is a little bit ambiguous, and on English websites, the title is typically given as Gaiflame, but this game is all about giant mechs, and that's where the title comes from. So it's very likely that those mechs are supposed to be called Gaiframes. I wound up having to track down a copy of the manual for the original computer version, and in that manual, it is definitely spelled Gaiflame. So there we go, that is the official spelling of the title. But I'm also pretty confident that this is one of those situations where the person who put that into the Latin alphabet originally got it wrong. It's the kind of thing that happened all the time going back and forth between Japanese and other languages. At least in this case, I have an official spelling, even if it is likely an error. Gaiflame is the third and final part in the Langrisser series, a trilogy of loosely connected strategy games developed and published by NCS, or as they were known on consoles, Messiah. We saw the second game in the series already on the PC Engine, since it was the first strategy game released on the platform, Gaia no Monsho. The computer version of Gaiflame is a completely different game. It's so radically different that it feels like the PC Engine version is a side story to that PC 88 version. The computer version covers a conflict that goes over the entire continent, and it's played from a grand strategy level. The PC Engine game has just one small portion of the continent, and most of the action there is tactical. If you played the PC 88 version of Gaiflame, you could play the PC Engine version and have a totally different experience. Although this is the end of the Langrisser series, it's not the end of the story, because it undergoes a transformation and becomes the Langrisser series of strategy games. We'll even see one of those on the PC Engine before I'm through. The first two games in the Langrisser series were set in a generic fantasy world. You had knights, dragons, wizards, that kind of thing. Gaiflame advances the timeline 4,000 years, and it puts it into a kind of sci-fi with a dash of magic setting. Wars are fought with giant robots, the Gaiflames. And even though they're giant robots, they fight with swords, spears, and axes. If you want to shoot something, you gotta be a tank or a flying aircraft. The plot involves two kingdoms at war. The Welda, which are you, and the villainous Diasule. You're playing as Irvin Lambert, commander of the Welda forces, who was given the task of finding the Gaia crystal that will be able to stop the invading Diasule. The game starts out on a world map, and the spots where you can see 6 squares are potential battlefields for you to control. The more of those that you occupy and have the little L next to, the more points you get for reinforcements. Enemy-controlled area has a little D next to it. There are paths that connect these locations, though they're not always obvious. In particular, the spot that's in the center of the map, a little bit off to the right side, that's a major choke point connecting the entire continent. From the map, you can hit button 1 to bring up a menu, and then choose to move your forces. But you probably don't want to do that as your first choice, because once you start moving units around, that is the only thing you can do. After you've finished moving, then you have to end your turn. You can only have 3 units in every area, and your forces will always occupy the top row. You can't withdraw units from any place that's under attack. So if an enemy has moved units onto one of your territories, whoever you have there is stuck until you complete the battle. Attacking like this does not instantaneously start a battle. It goes to the next turn, giving the defending player an opportunity to move additional units in. But once they're done moving all of their units on that turn, then it will be time to start fighting. Your other options from the world map screen are to acquire more units, and these will appear at your home base in the lower left-hand corner. The other thing you can do is search for information on the Gaia crystal. If you pick this, Irvin starts wandering around the map that he's currently located at, and can go talk to people. You do this mainly by barging into people's houses. It works a lot like the strategy game controls, where you can move him a certain number of spaces, and then it resolves whatever happens there. Once you're done investigating, you return to the world map by walking to the edge of the area. Besides looking for information on the Gaia Crystal, this is also how you obtain additional magic power and learn spells that will help your units in battle. When you start a battle, you're first given the option of using a spell, and then it's time to fight. Every spot on the world map has its own unique battle map, but I'm afraid while I was recording, I only saw this one. I got my forces to the choke point first, and then was repeatedly attacked before I could do anything else. Units have movement points, attack points, and hit points. And on your turn, you can choose to move, then attack, or just attack. You can't see the status of the enemy units at all, so you'll want to reference the manual and keep track of what's going on. When two units get into conflict, only the attacker gets a shot in. There are no counterattacks. Your chance to hit is affected by the terrain that both you and the enemy are standing on. Hitting among buildings or trees will increase your defense, while standing on the high ground of a mountain will increase your attack. You don't get a lot of feedback on what happens when you attack. You either just get a small little pop, which means you did nothing, or an explosion that goes on for about a second, which means that you actually did damage. If you damage the enemy, then they lose some hit points, and how many depends on your attack power. Knock the hit points to 0 and they explode. Gaiflame is one of those games where on your turn you move all of your units. However, who goes first and second in each turn is randomized. So there will be plenty of times where you get 2 turns in a row, or the opposing forces get 2 turns in a row. The way you get a game over in Gaiflame is if Irvin's unit gets defeated, or if the enemy takes over your base. It's not too tough to maintain a defensive line for your base, and you're probably going to keep Irvin out of battles where you aren't going to win. You can save your progress in the game from the world map to the Tendokoe 2 memory bank. However, that is the only way to save. They don't offer any passwords for this game, and if you don't have the Tendokoe 2, a full game of Gaiflame can last at least 3 hours. At this point, I really have to talk about the AI here, and it is brain dead. The only thing that it's capable of is throwing units straight at you. There's a formation that it prefers on the battle map, but it's one that's trivially easy to break. And it's not like you get support from surrounding units. The computer will try to move to squares that are occupied and then just give up. If you're looking for a challenging opponent, you should probably look someplace else. And unfortunately, you can't play against a human in Gaiflame. I've had a lot of people in Japan who are disappointed by Gaiflame, but a lot of them seem to be fans of the Langrisser series, who went back to the Elflied series to play the predecessors, and Gaiflame gave them something radically different. I didn't enter this with those kinds of expectations, but I still found myself disappointed in Gaiflame. A strategy game where you have a big world map and then zoom in for close tactical battles that play quickly is a pretty good idea, and it's been done a few times. But here, the implementation is not very good. Pinning your forces down means you keep fighting the same battle over and over again. The AI is brain dead enough that it'll throw bodies into a meat grinder, and there isn't a whole lot of tactical depth when you get down to it. I like the concept of adventuring for the crystal, but it winds up feeling bolted on, especially since interviewing people plays out like a war game. The fact that the map has a central choke point exacerbates the problem of fighting the same battles. Even if you try to move around, eventually you're going to have to try to push your way through that center. And there didn't seem to be a huge variety of units. There's only 6 that you can buy, plus Irvin. I suppose that if you just wanted to dip your toe into strategy games, Gaiflame isn't a bad option. It's simple and straightforward. But anyone who isn't a complete beginner at the genre is likely going to walk away from Gaiflame disappointed.